Get this intruder away from the table. She had no clue I owned the very company she worked for. The next morning, I reassigned her to the dish room. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end and drop the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. I should have sensed trouble the moment I rang the doorbell. Normally, my son Marcus greets me with the warm smile I've loved since he was a boy. Instead, Zaraya appeared, her manicured hand gripping the handle as if she ruled the house. Oh, you're here. Her tone carried that chilly note she saves just for me, the kind that makes me feel like a stranger in my own child's home. I tightened my hold on the small gift bag, a hand-knitted sweater for my grandson Tommy that I'd worked on for weeks. Hello, Zaraya. I brought something for Tommy's birthday. She didn't step aside. Her eyes swept over my simple black dress, the best I owned, yet clearly not good enough for her standards. Marcus is still getting ready. The other guests are already here, she said. Other guests? Marcus had invited me for a small family dinner, his voice tight as always, and Zaraya hovered nearby. Inside, the difference hit me hard. The living room glittered with well-dressed couples, jewelry catching the chandelier light. They spoke in the low, self-important tones of people convinced their conversations mattered more than anyone else's. I even recognized a few from the society pages. Then a burst of sunshine. Grandma Sherry! Tommy ran toward me, arms open wide. Happy birthday, sweetheart, I whispered, hugging him close. He smelled of chocolate cake and pure childhood joy. I made you something special. But before I could give him the gift, Zaraya's hand landed on his shoulder, pulling him back. Tommy, remember what we talked about? Grandma needs to wash her hands first. Go play with your cousins. The message was obvious. I wasn't clean enough for her son. Dinner was worse. The long table gleamed with china I'd never seen, probably wedding gifts for her side. They seated me at the far end beside an empty chair, and Marcus's college friend, who spent the meal bragging about his latest business deal. Marcus met my eyes once and offered a weak smile, until Zaraya whispered something to him, and he looked away. My heart sank. Then Zaraya's voice cut through the room. So Sherry, Marcus says you're still running that little cleaning company? The word little dripped with disdain. Several guests turned toward me, curiosity and pity mixing in their eyes. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Yes, I said quietly, I own a business. Zaraya let out a laugh like ice in a glass. Oh, how quaint. A business, she told the woman beside her. Sherry does office cleaning. Very humble work. The woman nodded politely but shifted slightly away. That subtle recoil I've seen my whole life when people think someone is beneath them. Each bite of food felt like sand. Around me, they talked of vacation homes, private schools, investment portfolios, topics they'd never want my opinion on. Dessert arrived and Tommy slipped onto my lap, chocolate frosting on his fingers. Grandma, tell me the story about the princess who saved herself. It was our tradition, a tale of a princess who needed no rescue because she was smart and brave. Before I could start, Zaraya stood, face flushed. Tommy, get down right now. You'll ruin your clothes. But Mom, I want Grandma's story, I said now. She lifted him off me so roughly he whimpered, then turned her blazing eyes on me. I think it's time for you to leave. The room fell silent. Even the loud businessman stopped mid-sentence as 20 pairs of eyes watched my quiet humiliation. Zaraya, please. My voice barely rose above a whisper. It's Tommy's birthday. Security, she suddenly called out, though there wasn't a guard in sight. Could you escort this woman out? She's disturbing our family dinner. Marcus pushed his chair back slowly, his face pale. Zaraya, that's my mother. Your mother, she repeated, each word sharpened with contempt. Doesn't belong at a table with decent people. Look at her, Marcus. She's embarrassing you. Embarrassing all of us. Even our son. I don't remember crossing the room. Only the thunder of my heartbeat and the weight of 20 silent guests watching me leave. At the door I turned once, hoping Marcus would meet my eyes. Say something. Anything. He stared down at his plate. Cool evening air hit my face as I stepped outside. My hands shook so badly I could barely find my keys. Behind me, the front door closed with a crisp, final click. In the car's rearview mirror, I saw a 68-year-old woman, silver hair tousled from Tommy's hug, my nicest dress suddenly looking like rags. For a fleeting moment, I almost believed the name she'd thrown at me. A poor old woman who didn't know her place. But Zaraya didn't know the truth. None of them did. The next morning, I would walk into the glass-walled headquarters of Meridian Technologies, ride the elevator to the top floor, and sit behind the mahogany desk of the founder and CEO. the very company where Zariah worked as a marketing manager, convinced she was climbing the corporate ladder with her sharp tongue and calculated cruelty. She had no idea the woman she'd humiliated signed her paycheck. Driving home through the quiet streets, my grip on the wheel steadied. Zariah wanted to teach me about knowing my place. Tomorrow I would teach her about knowing hers. I arrived at Meridian at 6:30 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual. The glass facade glowed in the pale dawn, a mirror of the city I'd helped build. 35 years ago, people laughed at the idea of a woman starting a tech company. Today it employs over 2,000 people across 3 states. The night guard looked startled. "Morning, Mrs. Morrison." Bright and early. Couldn't sleep, I admitted. I'd spent the night replaying every cruel word, every pitying glance from that dinner table. My office filled the northeast corner of the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic skyline, but I hardly noticed. Instead, I opened the employee database. Zariah Mitchell Morrison, marketing manager, digital campaigns. Hired 18 months ago. Her photo showed the same condescending smile she wore when she called me a poor old woman. I scrolled through her file, glowing performance notes and 3 formal complaints. Margaret Chen, 61. Accounting. Zariah mocked her methods as outdated in a budget meeting. Robert Williams, 58. IT, Zariah demanded unpaid overtime and belittled him for being too slow. Janet Rodriguez, 63, custodial supervisor. Zariah insisted she be reassigned to nights after a minor scheduling conflict. Each complaint had been quietly dismissed. Cold anger settled in my chest. This wasn't about last night. This was a pattern. She targeted older employees, hiding behind the company's reluctance to confront conflict. My phone rang. "Marcus?" "Mom." His voice cracked with exhaustion. "I'm sorry about last night." Zariah was stressed about the dinner party. She didn't mean what she said. I closed my eyes, the city stretching out beyond the glass, and let the silence speak for me. Even on the phone, Marcus kept making excuses. "She called security to have me removed from my grandson's birthday dinner," I said. "Mom, there was no security," he replied quietly. "She humiliated me in front of 20 people." A long pause. "I know. I should have said something. I'm sorry. But you know how she gets when she's planning events. Everything has to be perfect. Perfect, as if my presence somehow ruined their perfect world. I need some time to think," I told him. "Of course." "But Mom, maybe next time you could dress up a little more. You know how important appearances are to Zariah's friends." After we hung up, I sat in silence. My gentle, kind son, the boy who once rescued injured birds and shared his lunch with classmates, was asking me to change who I am to fit his wife's cruelty. By 8 o'clock, the office below my corner suite was buzzing. Through the window, I watched employees pour into the building. Somewhere among them was Zariah, probably sharing her version of the dinner with coworkers, painting me as the difficult mother-in-law who didn't know her place. I pressed the intercom. "Helen, I need you to pull some personnel files quietly." "Of course. Which ones?" "Digital campaigns division. Everything. Performance reviews, project reports, internal messages, and Helen. Look for anything involving older staff." Helen had worked with me for 15 years, rising from secretary to executive assistant. At 62, she was exactly the kind of employee Zariah liked to target. She didn't ask questions. She knew when something serious was brewing. An hour later, she returned with a stack of files that confirmed what I feared. Zariah's department had the highest turnover rate in the company, especially among employees over 50. Exit interviews spoke of age-biased remarks and a hostile atmosphere. But somehow those reports never reached my desk. Among the printed emails was one that made my hands tremble. "Can you believe they're making me work with Janet on the Morrison project? The woman can barely operate a smartphone. Why do we keep these dinosaurs around? They're just taking up space that could go to people who actually understand the modern workplace." The Morrison project, the one that earned Zariah a hefty bonus, had actually begun with an idea from Janet Rodriguez, the 63-year-old custodial supervisor Zariah later had pushed to the night shift. I picked up the phone. "Jennifer in HR? This is Sherry Morrison. Bring me the organizational chart for digital campaigns and come to my office right away." 20 minutes later, Jennifer sat across from me, face pale as I laid out the evidence. "Mrs. Morrison, I had no idea. Some of these complaints should have gone directly to you." "They should have," I said. "But they didn't, which tells me problem runs deeper than one manager. Right now, we start with Soraya Mitchell Morrison. Jennifer swallowed. What action would you like to take? I want her transferred immediately. To which department? I thought of Janet cleaning conference rooms at night because Soraya found her inconvenient. Of Margaret Chen, 61, publicly mocked for her tried-and-true methods. Of Robert Williams, 58, ordered to work unpaid overtime and called slow. Food services, I said evenly. Dishwashing. Jennifer blinked. That's a dramatic change. She'll almost certainly file a grievance. Tell her it's part of a new company program for management to understand every level of operations. Temporary. Pending restructuring. If she refuses, I allowed a thin smile, then she's free to find a company that appreciates her dynamic personality. After Jennifer left, I stood at the window, 42 floors above the city. Below, people moved like tiny figures on a board, unaware of the choices being made that would change their day. Tomorrow, Soraya would report to the basement cafeteria, hairnet on, hands in the industrial sinks, working side by side with the very people she once called dinosaurs. She would finally learn what it felt like to be looked down on, to have her worth questioned, to be treated as if she didn't matter, all without realizing the woman she'd humiliated held her future in her hands. I picked up the phone and called the cafeteria manager. It was time to set things in motion. The basement cafeteria of Meridian Technologies never slept. Industrial washers roared, steam curled up from deep sinks, and the scent of soap mixed with the hum of machinery. It was honest work, the kind that kept a company alive, yet invisible to those who benefited from it. Wearing a borrowed maintenance uniform and a baseball cap that hid my silver hair, I blended in easily with the staff. At 68, I could pass for one of the veteran cleaners without a second glance. Through the service window, I spotted Soraya. 3 days in, she was still fighting the spray nozzle on the industrial sink. Her designer manicure was chipped, her face tight with anger beneath the required hairnet and plastic apron. Coworkers kept their distance. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to Maria, a sturdy woman of about 55 with calloused, capable hands. "I have a master's in marketing. I used to manage a 7-figure campaign portfolio. Now they've got me washing dishes like some..." "Like some what?" Maria cut in, voice sharp. "You think this work makes us less than you?" Soraya flushed. "That's not what I meant. I just mean I'm qualified for something better." "We're all qualified for something," Maria said evenly. "From the vegetable station, Janet Rodriguez, yes." The same Janet Soraya once pushed to the night shift looked up. "There's dignity in every kind of honest work, sweetheart." Soraya rolled her eyes when they weren't looking. "Easy for her to say," she whispered. "She's probably done this her whole life. Even here, even reduced to scrubbing dishes, Soraya couldn't resist looking down on others." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Mom, Soraya's going through a rough patch at work. Some restructuring thing. She's really stressed. Maybe we could have dinner this weekend, just the 3 of us." I typed back, "I'll think about it." But I already knew my answer. Watching her these past 3 days had shown me that her cruelty wasn't a mask for family events. It was part of her. On the 4th day, I decided to move closer. During the lunch rush, when the clatter of trays and the hiss of steam filled the air, I slipped into the kitchen with a mop and a clipboard. "Excuse me," I said, roughening my voice and adding a slight accent. "Need to clean the floor around your station." Soraya barely glanced at me. "Whatever. Just don't get in my way." I worked the mop slowly, staying near enough to catch her conversation with Luis, the young man helping her adjust. "I don't get why they're making me do this," she said, scraping food off a plate with unnecessary force. "It's probably that old lady from HR. She never liked me." "Jennifer's fair," Luis replied. "Maybe it really is temporary." "Temporary, sure." Soraya snorted. "This is punishment for something." "I just can't figure out what." She gestured with a soapy hand. "Look at this place. Look at these people. I don't belong here." "Hey," Luis said quietly. "These people work hard. They're good people." Soraya let out a cold laugh. "Good people?" "Luis, wake up. They're here because they couldn't make it anywhere else. They don't have the skills or the brains to do anything better." I froze, the mop handle tightening in my grip. She nodded toward Janet. "Bet she never even finished high school. And that woman with the accent earlier? Probably not even supposed to be here. They should be grateful for any job they can get." Luis shifted uneasily. "Soraya, that's not true." Soraya's voice sharpened. "Some people are meant to lead and some are meant to follow. Some create value, and some are just maintenance. Just maintenance. as if the very people who kept the company running, who made sure employees like her old self could shine, were somehow less human. I kept mopping, slow and steady, while Zoraya kept talking. She criticized Maria's English, called Luis naive, for defending older workers, and made sly remarks about Janet's appearance. Then she said the words that froze my blood. The worst part? My mother-in-law is probably loving this. She's probably sitting in her tiny apartment, laughing about how her successful daughter-in-law got knocked down a peg. Even here, elbow deep in soapy water, she was still looking for someone to blame. Your mother-in-law? Luis asked carefully. Oh, she's a pathetic old woman who thinks the world owes her something just because she's old, Zoraya replied. She showed up to my son's birthday party dressed like she was headed to a garage sale and embarrassed my husband in front of all our friends. I had to ask her to leave. Her voice carried no hint of the truth. No mention of calling security. No acknowledgement of the humiliation she'd caused. In her version, she was the victim, bravely protecting her family from an embarrassing relative. Luis tried to be polite. She sounds complicated. She's bitter and jealous of what Marcus and I have built, Zoraya said. She spent her life doing menial jobs and can't stand that her son married someone with education and class. She just wants to drag us down. Menial jobs like the one she was doing right now. Like the work performed with dignity and pride by the people around her. I finished mopping and turned to leave, but her voice cut through the clatter once more. You know what's really sick? My husband actually feels sorry for her. He thinks I should apologize for protecting our family from embarrassment. Can you believe that? As I stepped into the service corridor, I heard Luis say softly, maybe you should talk to her. Family matters. Zoraya's laugh was sharp as glass. Family? Real family doesn't show up looking like they just crawled out of a trailer park. Real family understands social boundaries. I leaned against the wall outside, my hands trembling as I pulled off the baseball cap and ran my fingers through my silver hair. 3 full days of washing dishes, of standing beside people she once dismissed, and she'd learned nothing. If anything, she'd hardened. That evening, Marcus called again. Mom, I'm worried about Zoraya. This new assignment is really getting to her. She comes home exhausted and angry every day. What does she tell you about it? I asked, already knowing. She thinks someone at work is targeting her. Maybe because she's young and successful. She wants to apologize for the other night. I almost laughed. Zoraya wanted to apologize only because she needed an ally. She wasn't sorry. She was strategic. Tell her I'm not ready for that conversation, I said. Mom, please. She's struggling. Marcus, I said gently. Has Zoraya told you what her new job actually is? She said it's some kind of cross-training program. Learning different parts of the business. Not washing dishes. Not working shoulder to shoulder with the very people she'd spent months belittling. Even to her husband, she couldn't admit the truth. I see, I said. Well, I'm sure she's learning a lot. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, thinking about the woman I'd watched all week. Tomorrow I would reveal myself. Tomorrow she would learn exactly who held her future in their hands. I arrived at the office early Friday morning, my decision made after a sleepless night. Zoraya hadn't learned empathy, only resentment. Helen, my longtime assistant, looked up as I entered. What can I do for you today, Mrs. Morrison? I need you to arrange a meeting, I said. Zoraya Mitchell Morrison, my office, 10 a.m. And Helen. Make sure she comes up in the main elevator. I want her to walk through the executive floor. At exactly 10, Helen's voice came over the intercom. Mrs. Morrison, your 10 o'clock is here. Send her in. I turned my chair to face the window, back to the door as footsteps crossed the marble floor. In the glass, I saw her reflection. Tired eyes, hair pulled back in a plain ponytail, designer clothes replaced with the casual uniform of the cafeteria. Excuse me, she said, irritation flickering in her voice. I was told someone wanted to see me about my transfer. I don't know why they sent me to the executive floor. There's obviously been a mistake. I slowly swiveled my chair around, letting the recognition dawn in her eyes. The change in her face was striking, confusion sliding into shock hardening into pure disbelief. Hello, Zoraya. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came. How did you get in here? I use my private entrance, I said calmly. The same one I've used every morning for 35 years. I gestured toward the chair across from my desk. Please, sit. We have a lot to discuss. She stayed standing, emotions flickering across her features like a spinning reel. Disbelief, anger, fear, calculation. This is some kind of joke. You can't be the CEO and founder of Meridian Technologies? I finished for her. I'm afraid I can. Soraya sank into the chair as if her legs had given out. But at dinner, you said you worked for a cleaning company. I said I owned a business. You assumed it was cleaning. I leaned back, studying her. People often see only what they expect to see, don't they? For a long moment, she was silent, clearly recalculating. When she spoke again, her tone was softer, laced with the charm that had carried her up the corporate ladder. Mrs. Morrison, I had no idea who you were. If I'd known, you would have treated me differently? I interrupted. Interesting. So your behavior depends on a person's social status? Her cheeks reddened. That's not what I meant. What did you mean exactly? She straightened, choosing a new tactic. There was obviously a misunderstanding. Family gatherings can be tense. People say things in the heat of the moment they don't mean. Oh, so when you called security to remove me from my grandson's birthday party, that was just a heated moment. I was stressed. Everything had to be perfect, and my presence made it imperfect, I said evenly. I turned to my computer and brought up her employee file. Tell me, Soraya, do you remember Margaret Chen? Her eyes flicked toward the door. Who? 61 accounting. You humiliated her in a budget meeting and suggested she step aside for someone more modern. That was a professional disagreement. Sometimes you have to be direct. What about Robert Williams in IT? You demanded unpaid overtime on your personal projects while telling him he couldn't keep up with younger staff. I have high standards. And Janet Rodriguez? You complained she was unprofessional when she couldn't rearrange a cleaning schedule for you at the last minute. She was moved to the night shift because of your report. Zoraya's composure cracked. I don't see what this has to do with... I swiveled the monitor toward her, showing the list of formal complaints. 3 allegations of age bias in 18 months. All dismissed because your supervisor assumed you were simply maintaining high standards. I was. Were you maintaining high standards? I asked quietly. When you told Luis in the kitchen that the staff down there lacked the skill or intelligence to do anything better. The color drained from her face. You were in the kitchen. Every day this week, I said. Listening to you dismiss hardworking people as just maintenance. Watching you learn nothing from the experience except how to blame others. She shot to her feet, mask slipping completely. This is entrapment. You can't spy on employees. I can observe the culture of my own company, I replied. And what I found is an employee who targets older workers, who believes social rank determines human worth, and who lacks the empathy required for leadership. This is about that dinner, she snapped. You're taking personal revenge. I stood and moved to the window, the city spread out beneath us. Do you know what I built this company on, Soraya? Respect for every perspective. The belief that wisdom comes in many forms, and that a person's value isn't defined by age or background. I turned back to her. You represent everything I've spent my career fighting against. Her voice was barely a whisper. So, what happens now? Are you firing me? That depends on you. Hope flickered in her eyes. What do you mean? You have a choice, I said. You can continue working in the kitchen, learning what it feels like to be treated the way you've treated others. Perhaps eventually you'll understand the impact of your actions, or you can resign today. I'll give you a neutral reference highlighting your marketing skills without detailing why you left. She stared at me for a long moment, weighing every option. Finally, she spoke, her words revealing everything I needed to know. This is blackmail. You're using your position to force me out because I didn't know who you were, Soraya said, her voice rising. I'm giving you a chance to leave with your dignity intact, I replied. My dignity? Her tone sharpened. You had me washing dishes for a week. You humiliated me. I gave you the same treatment you've given employees under your supervision, I said evenly. The difference is they had no choice. You do. She moved toward the door, then turned back, anger tightening her face. Marcus will hear about this. He'll know what kind of person his mother really is. Marcus will hear the truth, I said. He'll learn that his wife has been bullying older employees and that she called security to remove his grandmother from her own grandson's birthday party. Her hand froze on the door handle. He'll also learn, I continued, that when offered a chance to take responsibility and grow, you chose to blame others and play the victim. You're destroying my marriage, she shot back. Your marriage is not my responsibility, Zoraia. Your character is... She stood there a moment, breathing hard, then coldly, "I choose the kitchen. I stay there and prove this is about your petty revenge. Marcus will see through you eventually." "Very well," I said quietly. "Report to the cafeteria Monday morning. Same time, same station." When the door closed, I sank into my chair, feeling every one of my 68 years. I'd hoped the truth might spark self-reflection. Instead, she chose defiance. She would return to the kitchen not to learn, but to endure, telling anyone who'd listen that she was the victim of a vindictive old woman, never admitting that her situation was born of her own cruelty. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Can we have lunch today? Zoraya has something she wants to tell you." I stared at the screen before typing back. "I'm afraid I'm busy today. Perhaps another time." I already knew what Zoraya wanted. Another attempt to twist the story, to use family ties to escape consequences. That conversation would happen on my terms. The call came on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks later. Marcus's voice was strained, carrying the weight of a truth he could no longer ignore. "Mom, we need to talk. All three of us." I set down my teacup. "About what, specifically?" "About Zoraya's job. About what happened at Tommy's birthday. About everything." I heard muffled voices in the background. Zoraya coaching him, no doubt. "She told me who you really are," he said at last. "I don't understand why you never told me you owned the company where she works." "You never asked what kind of business I owned," I replied. "You assumed, just like she did." "That's not the point, Mom." "The point is you've been manipulating her employment, punishing her for personal reasons. Even now, even with the facts before him, he was defending her." "Is that what she told you?" I asked. "She said you've had her washing dishes for weeks as some kind of revenge." "That's not the mother I know." "Then perhaps you don't know me as well as you think," I said calmly. "Just as you don't know your wife as well as you think." "And what's that supposed to mean?" "It means we should have this conversation in person." Tonight, my apartment, 8 o'clock. They arrived 15 minutes late. Zoraya entered first, polished and composed, hair perfectly styled, makeup immaculate, clothing chosen to project competence wrapped in wounded pride. Marcus followed, looking tired, caught between two women he loved but clearly didn't understand. I served coffee in my small living room, the same modest space I'd occupied for a decade, a sharp contrast to their grand suburban home. "Mom," Marcus began, settling on the worn sofa. "Zoraya's told me some disturbing things about work." "I'm sure she has," I said, remaining standing, hands clasped behind my back. "What exactly did she tell you?" Zoraya leaned forward, her expression carefully balanced between hurt and resolve. "I told him you've been using your position to humiliate me. That you transferred me to the worst job in the company as punishment for a family disagreement." "A family disagreement," I repeated slowly. "Is that what you're calling it?" "Mom," Marcus cut in. "Regardless of what happened at Tommy's birthday, using your company to settle personal scores isn't right. It's not like you." "You're right," I said. "It's not like the mother you know, but it is exactly like the CEO I have always been." I moved to the window, city lights glittering below. "Tell me, Marcus, what do you really know about Zoraya's performance at work?" "She's successful, ambitious, she's building a career. She's also filed 3 complaints against older employees in 18 months, I said quietly. She's created a hostile environment for anyone over 50. She's been systematically tearing down people she considers beneath her." Zoraya's careful composure faltered. "Those were legitimate professional concerns. You told Luis the kitchen staff don't have the skills or intelligence to do anything better. You called them maintenance. You said Janet Rodriguez probably never finished high school and implied Maria might not even belong in the country." Marcus's face went pale. "Zoraya, is that true?" I was frustrated. "People say things when they're under stress. The same way you say things when you're stressed about dinner parties?" I asked softly. "The same way you called security to remove the Perona from your table." Marcus frowned. "Perona? It means poor little woman in Spanish," I explained. "It's what your wife called me before having me escorted out of your son's birthday party." Silence thickened the room. Marcus stared at Zoraya, his expression shifting through disbelief and dawning recognition. The same look he wore as a child when he realized Santa wasn't real. "You called my mother a poor little woman," he said. Zoraya's eyes darted like a trapped animal. "Marcus, you have to understand. She showed up looking like... I didn't know who she was. So that makes it acceptable?" "No, but what?" His voice rose. the careful control of years cracking. It's okay to humiliate someone if you think they're poor. It's okay to throw my mother out of our home because she doesn't meet your standards. Marcus, please. You're not understanding. I'm understanding perfectly, he said, standing and pacing to the far wall. I understand my wife threw my mother out of our house because she was embarrassed by her. I understand she's been bullying older employees at work. I understand that when Mom gave her consequences, she came home and played the victim. Zoraya's mask slipped completely. Your mother has been lying to you, manipulating this entire situation to make me look bad. How? Marcus's question cut the air like a blade. How has she been lying? She pretended to be a cleaning lady. She spied on me in her own company. I observed an employee with multiple complaints, I said evenly. Marcus turned to me. About the complaints, is that true? I nodded. 3 formal complaints in 18 months. All dismissed because her supervisor thought she was just holding high standards. Marcus looked back at his wife, the last illusions in his eyes fading. So when you came home every night complaining about how unfairly you were being treated, when you said someone was targeting you, you were actually facing consequences for your own behavior. Marcus, you don't understand what it's like in the corporate world. Sometimes you have to be tough. Tough? His voice cracked. You called security on my mother. You humiliated her in front of 20 people. You made our son watch his grandmother be thrown out of his birthday party. I was protecting our family's reputation. From what? From my mother? His voice shook with anger. From the woman who raised me, who worked 3 jobs to put me through college, who never missed a school conference or a baseball game. You were protecting us from the most decent person I know. Zoraya stood, flushed and desperate. She's not the saint you think she is. Look where she lives. Look how she dresses. She's an embarrassment. Her words landed like a slap. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost cold. Get out. What? Get out of my mother's apartment. Now. Before I say something, I'll regret. Marcus, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious. Go home. Pack your things. We'll handle custody through lawyers. Zoraya looked at me, eyes wild. This is what you wanted, isn't it? You wanted to destroy my marriage. I met her gaze steadily. I wanted you to learn that actions have consequences. That cruelty toward others because you think they're beneath you is unacceptable. I wanted you to find a shred of empathy. Instead, you destroyed everything yourself. Marcus added, his voice firm. The moment you decided our son was better off without his grandmother, you chose this. Zoraya searched our faces one last time, hoping for a lifeline. Finding none, she grabbed her purse and stalked to the door. This isn't over, she hissed. The door closed with a final click, leaving only the quiet hum of the city beyond the window. Yes, I said quietly. It is. After the door closed, Marcus dropped into the chair Zoraya had vacated, his head in his hands. We sat in silence, the weight of 20 years of choices settling between us. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. I'm so sorry for everything. I know you are. He looked up, eyes rimmed red. How long have you known who she really is? I suspected from the beginning, I admitted, but I hoped I was wrong. I hoped love might make her kinder. Marcus exhaled, the sound heavy. What happens now? Now you rebuild, I said. Be the father Tommy needs. Remember who you are beneath the compromises you've made. And Zoraya? I thought of the options I'd given her. Resign or continue in the kitchen. Zoraya will find her own path. She always has. Can you forgive me for letting her treat you that way? I moved beside him, taking his hand. You're my son. There's nothing to forgive. Yet I knew some wounds leave scars even as they heal. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, I reviewed quarterly reports that showed Meridian Technologies thriving. Sunlight poured through the windows, across the same mahogany desk, where I'd made decisions for decades. Helen entered with coffee and the morning mail. Mrs. Morrison, there's a resignation letter from the Food Services Department. I didn't need to open it to know. Zoraya's elegant handwriting filled a single page. Formal resignation, effective immediately, citing personal reasons and new opportunities. No reflection, no remorse. Only an exit designed to preserve what remained of her pride. I signed the acceptance without hesitation. Some people grow from consequences, others simply wait them out until escape feels possible. Helen, I said, process this today. And from now on, exit interviews for all supervisors. No exceptions. The changes I'd implemented reached far beyond one toxic manager. Complaints about workplace bullying now came directly to my desk. Management completed empathy and leadership training. Janet Rodriguez had been promoted to floor supervisor, her experience finally valued. Margaret Chen was back on day shift with a commendation in her file. Robert Williams was leading a major IT upgrade, his decades of skill proving invaluable. Slowly, the culture was becoming what I had always envisioned. My phone rang. Marcus. Hi, Mom. Free for lunch? Tommy wants to show you something. The bond with my son had healed like a bone, slow but stronger. The divorce had been swift. Soraya moved back to her parents' home in another state, choosing distance over facing the truth. Of course, I said. Actually, Marcus added, Tommy wants a picnic in the park. He's been practicing something for you. An hour later, we sat under a broad oak tree. Tommy raced across the playground, his laughter carrying on the breeze. Marcus looked healthier than he had in years, the constant tension gone from his shoulders. Mom, watch this, Tommy called, hanging upside down from the monkey bars with fearless delight. Be careful, sweetheart, I called back, heart swelling with the simple joy of being present. Marcus settled beside me, unpacking sandwiches. He asks about you every day. When is Grandma coming over? Can Grandma teach me to bake cookies? Tell me the princess story? And what do you tell him? I asked. That Grandma is busy building castles and slaying dragons. He smiled, a genuine smile I hadn't seen in years. He's decided you're the most powerful person he knows. I laughed, watching Tommy's determined climb. Smart boy. Too smart sometimes. Last week he asked why Mommy moved away. Marcus said quietly. I didn't know what to tell him. What did you say? I told him that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes mean they have to live in different places for a while. He handed me a juice box. He asked if she's coming back. I told him I don't know. Is that wrong? Should I have been more definite? I squeezed his hand. You told him the truth in a way he could understand. That's all any parent can do. The autumn breeze rustled the oak leaves above us as Tommy laughed again, the sound bright and unbroken. A reminder that even after betrayal and loss, love can still take root and grow stronger than before. Tommy sprinted over, cheeks flushed with excitement. Grandma, come see the castle I built in the sandbox. I let him tug me toward his creation, an intricate fortress of sand and sticks any architect would admire. As I praised his work, I noticed other families scattered through the park. Grandparents pushing swings, parents chasing toddlers, the gentle chaos of ordinary life. This was what I had fought for. Not revenge, not vindication, simply the right to stand in my grandson's world without apology, valued for who I am, not dismissed for who I'm not. That evening, after Marcus and Tommy drove away, I lingered in my apartment surrounded by photographs. Marcus's graduation, old holiday dinners, Tommy's milestones. New pictures had joined them. Tommy and me baking cookies, reading bedtime stories, building blanket forts. A life reclaimed. My phone buzzed. A text from Luis, the young man from the kitchen who'd become an unexpected friend. Mrs. Morrison, Maria's grandson, graduated high school today, first in his family. She wanted to thank you for the scholarship program you started. I smiled as I typed back, give her my congratulations. Hard work deserves recognition. That scholarship program, my newest initiative, funds education for the children and grandchildren of longtime employees. People like Maria, who had quietly kept Meridian running for decades, deserved to see their families thrive. Another message arrived, this one from Janet Rodriguez. A night shift supervisor position opened in Building B. Interested in applying? Could you give me a reference? I laughed softly and replied, I might know someone who can help with that. As the sun slipped below the skyline, I made a simple dinner and settled with a book. The apartment was quiet, not the silence of loneliness, but the calm of peace. I thought of Soraya wherever she was. No satisfaction in her downfall, only sadness for the chances she'd wasted. She could have learned empathy, could have rebuilt her marriage on respect instead of status. But she chose to see herself as a victim, to blame others rather than accept responsibility. Some people spend a lifetime running from accountability, never realizing the freedom they seek comes only from owning their choices. My phone rang one last time. Marcus. Mom, Tommy wanted me to say goodnight. He's worried you might be lonely. In the background, I heard my grandson's small voice. Tell Grandma dragons are scared of the dark, so she should leave a light on. Tell him I'll leave the lights on, I said, smiling. And Marcus, thank you. For what? For seeing the truth when it mattered. After we hung up, I did leave a small light on. Not because I feared dragons, but because Tommy cared enough to worry. Lying in bed, I thought about power. Not the kind tied to titles or social circles, but the kind that comes from knowing your worth and refusing to accept less. The kind that stands up for others even when it's hard. The kind that chooses dignity over convenience and truth over comfort. Zarya had mistaken cruelty for strength and manipulation for intelligence, but real power builds instead of breaks. It lifts others, protects those who can't protect themselves, and recognizes the value in every person, regardless of age, accent, education, or job title. I founded Meridian Technologies on those principles 35 years ago, and I'll defend them for as long as I breathe. Tomorrow, I would return to my office to review scholarship applications, approve well-earned promotions, and keep strengthening the culture we've built. But tonight I slept deeply, the quiet sleep of someone who fought for what mattered and won. Not through revenge, but through steady consequences and an unwavering belief in basic human decency. I had reclaimed my place in my family and in my company. I had protected those who couldn't protect themselves. And most of all, I had shown my grandson what true strength looks like. Not the ability to hurt, but the choice to help. That is the kind of power worth having, the kind that creates light instead of darkness, the kind that builds a legacy. Now I'm curious about you. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Have you faced something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments, and when you're ready, check out the 2 stories on the final screen. Audience favorites that just might surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until the end.